And we're talking about this today. So, Anita Sarkeesian, writer, video producer for Feminist Frequency, has set up a Kickstarter to fund a series of videos exploring recurring female stereotypes and archetypes in video games. As you will no doubt be shocked to learn, the prospect that someone somewhere on the internet was going to talk about sexism in the same vicinity as video games was met with the usual reasoned, dignified reaction.
Now, you see, Bob, I'd love to be on your side here, but the thing is, both you and Anita Sarkeesian have proven multiple times over the years that you can't tell the difference between legitimate criticism and harassment.
I'd love to show you some of the actual examples of sexism, misogyny, and even anti-Semitism that hit Sarkeesian's YouTube page announcing the project, but this is a family show, so I can't.
Let's see if I got this straight. Since this is a quote-unquote family show, you don't want to talk about things like harassment, anti-Semitism, and all that other shit because this is a quote-unquote family show. But you are going to instead speak about sexism, sexual harassment, sexual objectification, and other adult themes in this supposedly family show.
That sort of thing is to be expected, of course, and while I think it's a mistake to ignore it, it can at least be easily dismissed as the inevitable side effect of the internet's ability to let everyone be H.G. Wells' Invisible Man for a few minutes every day. I could probably get a few months of shows out of this and the reaction to it, but I don't want to. Suffice it to say, having seen her earlier videos on similar subjects, I imagine I'll find plenty to disagree with, but it's a project deserving of support, and certainly not deserving of all this preemptive backlash. That said, there is one element of all of the, constructive criticism that I am actually inclined to address. See, every time someone brings up offensive, exploitative, or even simply unrealistic portrayals of women in media,
You're viable, Ken. Hey, don't laugh. Don't laugh.
Bob, the character you are showing on the screen right now is the daughter of an undead pirate who wields a magic whip sword that stops her from aging and also makes her boobs grow bigger. What in the almighty fuck gave you the impression that these characters are supposed to be realistic? You know what I just realized as I was recording this video? People say that having a female fictional character that's too curvy or too fit or too whatever is inherently toxic because it sets a bad example. It sets, what's the term? Unrealistic body standards. But I'm just now realizing that you know how many dudes have fucking said they got into fitness because of Dragon Ball Z?
But this has gotten me so hyped, especially the training scenes in the hyperbolic chamber. Not gonna lie, this is one of the animes that actually got me to start training.
Now, as many of you know, the Dragon Ball franchise has been my personal favorite anime series of all time ever since I was in 3rd grade, and is honestly the #1 reason I work out today. Dragon Ball is like the epitome of the anime gym training motivation. Like, legit. So many bodybuilders today have cited DBZ as their main source of inspiration for working out. If you haven't been inspired by Dragon Ball to work out at least a little, you need to check your authentic fan card.
So when people say that a character like fucking, I don't know, Chun-Li or Lara Croft have an ideal body type, that's the most toxic thing ever. That's fucking sacrilege. But when a dude openly says that the reason he started working out is because he wanted to look like a fictional character that isn't even human in the show, that's perfectly fine.
and the possible negative societal effects thereof, a lot of people are quick, kinda suspiciously quick really, to opine that this isn't really a big issue because, hey, men are also presented unrealistically, you know, with the big muscles and the movie star looks, etc., in much of the same media.
Yes, that is essentially my stance on this subject. If you're allowed to quote-unquote sexually objectify men, you should be allowed to sexually objectify women in basically the same way.
So goes the supposed logic of this argument. Since men generally don't get mad about every male hero rocking a six-pack, women, or rather the evil feminists, have no business being mad about every woman sporting a D-cup. There's really no way to respond to that without sounding smug and dismissive.
Yes, there is, Robert. You just don't want to do it.
So I'm just gonna have to go ahead and be smug and dismissive. Firstly, yes, it's true that unrealistic body images of men are about as pervasive in the media as they are for women. It's just not a problem in the same way.
Oh, brother!
You see, guys, comics and games, etc., they don't exist in a vacuum. Whether you choose to acknowledge the connection or not, they are part of the society and circumstance that surrounds them. The issue of the media promoting grotesquely unrealistic body standards for women is a problem because those standards are still actively used against women all the time.
What do you mean, used against women? That's such a vague phrase to use here.
This is not an opinion, nor is it a fantasy invented by the feminist boogie person, nor is it something that used to happen but can't possibly happen anymore because you had a female boss once and thus that proves everything is equal now. It is a demonstrable fact that modern society still too often judges the worth of women by their appearance over their ability.
So what Rob is trying to say here is that fictional characters being too attractive is bad for women because if men see those fictional characters being attractive, they'll think that all women should look like that. Bobbert also says that this is an objective fact. My question is if this is such a blatant objective fact, then how come you're not showing any evidence to back up your argument? You're not showing any stories, no recent news articles, no statistics, no this, no that. You're not giving us any reason to believe you. I know the big picture isn't a fucking CNN or Fox News show, okay? Bob isn't known for doing statistics and polls and interviews and shit like that. I understand that. But honestly, when you make a argument like this, a political argument like this, you have to give evidence to back up your statements. This is not complicated. I learned this when I was in like fucking middle school. And let's just talk about this idea that there are a significant group of men out there that will refuse to hire a woman to do a job if they don't look like their favorite video game character. That is retarded. If a supposed businessman refuses to hire a woman at his company because she doesn't look like Jessica Rabbit, then he is a shitty person. It has nothing to do with the media that he consumes.
Every day in the real world, qualified women lose out on jobs and advancement because this or that gatekeeper of opportunity, overwhelmingly likely to be a white heterosexual male, would have preferred someone who looked a little more like, for example, Lara Croft. And yes, while I'm aware that anti-male workplace sexism exists in kind of the same way that the white buffalo exists, I'm sorry, but guys, the likelihood that you're going to lose out on a job because you don't remind anyone of Kratos is astronomically low unless the job you are applying for is being Kratos.
You can say the exact same thing about women. He talks about this like it's like common knowledge that everybody knows about this. I have never heard a story of somebody being fired or not hired because they don't look like a fictional character. The idea that one person in an isolated incident was denied a job because they didn't look like a video game character is already hard enough to believe. The idea that a majority of people in this country do that is damn near impossible for me to believe without evidence.
Now it would be great if all of our social inequality problems really had been fixed at some point in the recent past, and we could really view these issues as just minor distractions disconnected from any larger context, but that's not the real world that we've got. Secondly, the argument fails on its face because even a casual glance at popular culture reveals that the two sides of beauty standards aren't even close to equal. Even if we just confine our focus to video games, and even more narrowly to just humanoid video game characters, sure, there are a lot of washboard abs and chiseled chins out there, but there's also tons of male characters, good and evil, who are, say, overweight, or short, or dweeby, or kind of feminine, or perhaps obscenely masculine, or just plain old butt ugly. Not to put too fine a point on it, but the most famous and popular video game hero of all time is a short, fat, hairy guy with an unglamorous blue-collar job.
And I feel the need to remind you, Bobbert, that the protagonist to one of the most critically acclaimed video game franchises of all time is a female that you cannot see because of the first-person perspective.
Women in games, on the other hand, nowhere near that variety physically. The only ugly female characters tend to be non-humanoid, and in terms of merely not conventionally attractive body types, we've got, what, the fat princess and who
It's called Google.
else? And no, Milena doesn't count because the fact that she's hiding a monster face on what's otherwise a 10 out of 10 body is a joke.
What do you mean Melina doesn't count? You were just complaining that there are too many conventionally attractive women in video games. Well, doesn't get much more unconventional than a literal blood-sucking mutant from a different dimension. Now, to me, this sounds like Bob is subtly implying that men will fuck anything. I am a straight male, so I can tell you, if Melina was real, most men would not fuck her. Saying that most men want to fuck Melina is like saying that most women want to fuck Pennywise. Also, Roberto says that Melina looks the way that she does because of a joke. Last time I checked, Mortal Kombat is not a comedy.
Now look, Mai Shiranui looking like she does is awesome. Everyone looking like she does is stupid.
No one is saying that, you syphilis-having dumbass. Again, I will say again, if a man says that all women should look the same, let alone all women should look like this specific fictional character, then he is a piece of shit. It has nothing to do with what video games he plays. It has nothing to do with what movies he watches. He's just a shitty person.
Thirdly, and this is the less important than interesting part, but, well, you do realize that the unrealistically buff male body types that pervade games and comics, etc., are not there to titillate female audiences, right? Now, that's not to say they don't. I'm sure plenty of women find, say, Marcus attractive, but he wasn't rendered that way for them. He was rendered that way for you. You meaning young heterosexual male gamers.
And exactly how is that bad for society?
All of these archetypes are based off long-standing artistic representation traditions that existed well before the relatively recent period when women were paid attention to as a marketing demographic. So yeah, Conan's big broad shoulders, Namor's swimmer's bod, Batman's codpiece, Ryu's ripped torso, everything about this, those weren't designed as sexual fantasies for them, fellas. Those were sexual self-image fantasies for you. Just saying. Oh, and speaking of sayings, well, okay, in all seriousness, geek culture and gamer culture especially desperately needs to get past these knee-jerk freakouts every time someone has something critical to say about this or that group's representation in the medium.
Berto, you are the last person who should be talking about public freakouts. Allow me to remind you that this is the same man who wanted to ditch democracy because Trump got elected. And let's not forget, Movie Bob made this video so that he can white knight for Aeneas Sarkeesian. You know, Aeneas Sarkeesian, the woman who went on Twitter and said that Zelda, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was a sexist video game despite not actually knowing anything about the game. Or the woman that fucking came out on Twitter again and said that The Mandalorian was sexist despite, you know, again, knowing nothing about the show, not even watching the fucking show.
Acknowledging that gaming has at best a history of issues with women is not going to cause your games to be taken away, and will ultimately do very little to stop this or that developer from making Big Boob Panty Ninja 12, providing they still want to.
I'm gonna have to politely disagree with you, fella.
So Blizzard has a brand new first-person shooter called Overwatch, and it features a ton of crazy, wacky characters, some female, some male, and they took a character's pose out of the game because it's apparently too sexy. So yeah, if you're curious what the pose is that was apparently too salacious, well, here it is. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Now, Street Fighter V is one of the more interesting examples of censorship in recent times. The first case of censorship made headlines all across the gaming media. During the beta phase of the game's development, it was noticed that Armika no longer gave her butt a playful slap during her critical art. Instead, the camera has been repositioned higher up, simply cutting it out of view, despite her performing exactly the same motion. You can even still hear the slapping noise. This was not all though. A similar change was made to Cammy's scene at the start of the match, where she jumps into battle. Somebody thought that being able to see an upskirt shot of her nether region was too much, and the camera now cuts this out just the same. Outraged at the seemingly unnecessary changes, fans demanded answers from Capcom, to which they explained they were due to it being a teen-rated game and there being rating issues.
But we want to make sure that Street Fighter remains a family-friendly franchise, and it's just that delicate balance that we play, ensuring that we remain a team game.
This explanation brought nothing but even more confusion though. Those of you familiar with the game will know that these changes were made despite there being tons of saucy content still in the game that was left untouched.
So according to Ryan Harvey, who was actually the interpreter for Fudo, who was one of the players that used Armika, ESPN actually had them censor Armika's default outfit because it was deemed too sexy by ESPN, because as many of you guys know, or if you don't know, EVO, as far as Street Fighter V goes, the finals, the top 8, was played on ESPN 2.
With that in mind, I have compiled this list to show what I believe are the top 5 most confusing censorship moments in video games. An honorable mention goes to adding a curtain to the Tharsha bikini scene in Fire Emblem Awakening, which was, for some reason, only done in the US and not Europe and other territories. Now,
so BioWare to edit sexualized cutscenes in Mass Effect's Legendary Edition. BioWare has confirmed that Mass Effect Legendary Edition will feature edits to some of its more sexualized cutscenes, particularly those involving Cerberus officer Miranda Lawson.
So please, chill.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I will end this video with a simple question. If these video game characters are so harmful to women, then why are there so many female cosplayers? I don't know a lot about cosplay, but I know it's not cheap.
I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.